In 1609, a ship full of English colonists bound for Virginia got caught in a hurricane and wrecked on a reef in the middle of the Atlantic. Nowhere near where they were supposed to be. One shipwreck changed history. 400 years later, Britain still governs a territory that grew out of that accident. Here's the crazy part. It's not a country. It's not fully independent. It's smaller than most airports. And it survived hurricanes, slavery, a governor's assassination, and its own vote for independence. And somehow never stopped being British. This is Bermuda, the colony that was never supposed to exist. Here's the first thing that surprises people about Bermuda. It's not in the Caribbean. It sits alone in the North Atlantic, over 600 miles east of North Carolina, closer to Cape Hatteras than to any Caribbean island. It's one of the most isolated, inhabited places in the Western Hemisphere. About 180 small islands and islets, only 7 large enough to support permanent communities, all connected by bridges into something that functions as one place. 400 years later, it's still Britain's oldest overseas territory. It's got one of the world's oldest parliaments. Nearly half its people descend from enslaved Africans. And today, it's one of the richest places on Earth per person. So how does a shipwreck turn into all that? Almost everything interesting about Bermuda traces back to one thing. Nobody actually meant to build a permanent colony here. It happened because a ship went off course. In 1609, a fleet of ships left England for the young colony of Jamestown, Virginia, carrying supplies and around 150 settlers. The flagship, the Sea Venture, got separated from the rest of the fleet in a hurricane, with the ship taking on water and about to sink. The captain made a call that sounded completely insane. He deliberately ran the ship straight onto a reef off Bermuda, on purpose, before the sea could finish the job itself. Believe it or not, everyone survived. Every single person aboard. Think about that. The whole crew on a reef in a hurricane. They spent the better part of a year on the islands, building 2 new ships from Bermuda cedar, and whatever they could salvage from the wreck. Most of them eventually made it on to Jamestown. A few stayed behind. But here's the detail most people don't know. News of the wreck eventually reached London, and it's widely believed to have inspired William Shakespeare's play The Tempest, written just a couple years later. A story about travelers shipwrecked on a mysterious island. One line even refers to the still-vexed Bermudas. A hurricane accident on a reef nobody meant to visit ended up in one of the most famous plays ever written. The Sea Venture wreck happened in 1609. By 1612, Bermuda had been formally added to the Virginia Company's charter, and 60 English settlers were sent out to build a proper colony, joining the handful who'd stayed behind. The settlement they founded, St. George's, is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of the oldest continuously inhabited English towns in the New World. Now here's where it gets interesting. By 1620, just 8 years after formal settlement, Bermuda had already set up its own representative assembly, a local government, elected representatives. The works. That makes it one of the oldest parliaments anywhere in the world. Older than almost anything comparable in the Americas. Sit with that for a second. A colony founded entirely by accident ended up governing itself earlier than most of the colonies that were actually planned. Before we go any further, it's worth pausing on something. Why did nobody settle this place for so long? Turns out, the geography here is almost as strange as the story. Bermuda sits alone inside something called the Sargasso Sea, the only sea on Earth with no land borders at all. Instead, it's defined purely by 4 massive rotating ocean currents, including the Gulf Stream, which is also what keeps the island warm despite sitting this far north. Head east from Bermuda, and you won't hit land for over 4,800 kilometers, not until the coast of Morocco, which is absolutely insane when you think about how much history got packed onto it this isolated. Here's the part that surprises people. Bermuda isn't really an island in the way most people picture one. It's the summit of a massive underwater volcano formed by a geological hotspot 30 to 35 million years ago, with its base sitting more than 4,300 meters below the ocean floor. over tens of millions of years. Coral reefs grew up around that volcanic peak, and marine sediment built up into a limestone cap nearly 60 meters thick. That limestone cap, not the volcano, is what people actually live on. That same geology gives Bermuda water clear enough to see 60 meters down, and coral reefs that thrive farther north than anywhere else on the planet. It's also responsible for the island's famous pink sand. Beaches like Horseshoe Bay get their color from a tiny red-shelled organism that lives on the reefs, eaten and crushed by parrotfish, mixed in with the white sand. Being this far out in the open Atlantic comes with a cost. Though Bermuda sits directly in the path of Atlantic hurricanes, and more than 300 shipwrecks litter the seafloor around it. Enough that wreck diving is its own small industry here now. And somehow, that's still not the strangest part. Bermuda has no rivers. None. No lakes. No real groundwater. Dig a well here and you'll hit brackish seawater, not fresh water. Think about that. An island surrounded by water with almost nothing to drink. So every single home on the island is built with a stepped, pure white limestone roof, designed specifically to funnel rainwater down into a hidden underground tank. It's not just tradition, it's the law. Every new home legally has to have a water tank sized to match its roof. The white color does double duty too. It reflects heat to keep the house cool, and it's built tough enough to survive hurricane winds. An entire island, quietly engineering its own water supply out of its own rooftops. That shouldn't work. And yet, it does. You'll notice a pattern the deeper you get into Bermuda's history. Almost nothing about this place went according to plan. It wasn't discovered on purpose. It wasn't settled on purpose. Its economy's been rebuilt from scratch at least twice, for reasons that had nothing to do with anyone's original intentions. Bermuda's entire story is what happens when a place just keeps adapting to whatever gets thrown at it. And the next part of that story is the hardest one. Within a few years of formal settlement, enslaved people were being brought to Bermuda, some of African descent. Some believed to be indigenous people from the Americas, initially intended in part to work as pearl divers, though the pearls the colonists hoped to find were never there. Over the following 2 centuries, the enslaved population grew until, by some point in Bermuda's colonial history, enslaved and free black Bermudans outnumbered the white colonial population. Bermuda officially abolished slavery in 1834, alongside the rest of the British Empire, but the effects didn't end in 1834. They're still visible in Bermuda today, in its people, its culture, its identity. Roughly half of Bermuda's population is of African descent, most tracing their ancestry directly to that period. Modern Bermuda's churches, its music, its food, all of it carries that history, not as a footnote, but as a foundation of who lives there now. That history hasn't always been calm, either. In 1973, Bermuda's British-appointed governor, Sir Richard Sharples, was assassinated, an event linked to unrest and black political movements pushing for greater self-determination at the time. It's a reminder that Bermuda's relationship with Britain and with its own colonial past has never been simple, and it's never been fully settled. But history wasn't done with Bermuda yet. For most of its history, it mattered to Britain for one simple reason: geography. Sitting alone in the middle of the North Atlantic, it was the perfect place to base a navy that needed to control shipping lanes between Europe and North America. Then the War of 1812 broke out, and suddenly this tiny island found itself at the center of one of Britain's biggest military operations in North America. The campaign against Washington, D.C., including the burning of the White House, was planned and launched from Bermuda, which by then served as the Royal Navy's main base for the entire North American coast. Over the following century, Britain built out the Royal Naval Dockyard into a genuine fortress. Thick stone walls, deep harbors, ammunition stores, the works. That military role didn't end with sailing ships, either. In the 1930s, the Royal Air Force set up a seaplane station on the island. Then World War II gave Bermuda another unexpected role, this time watching over Atlantic shipping lanes against German U-boats. Somehow, a tiny island nobody meant to settle became one of the British Empire's most valuable military outposts. For a long stretch of its history, Bermuda's economy ran on agriculture, exporting produce, particularly to the United States. But even before that, Bermuda had already found one way to punch above its weight. In the 18th century, islanders built nearly 1,000 lightweight, rot-resistant ships called Bermuda sloops, made from native cedar, prized for hauling salt and goods across the Atlantic faster than almost anything else afloat at the time. Then, in 1930, the U.S. slapped on new tariffs that wiped out Bermuda's agricultural export trade almost overnight. So, what do you do when your entire economy collapses overnight? Bermuda turned to the thing it actually had: a pleasant climate, easy steamship access, and pink sand beaches. Tourism took over as the backbone of the economy for most of the 20th century, drawing wealthy American, Canadian, and British visitors escaping the winter. Then it did it again. Starting in the latter half of the 20th century, Bermuda built something almost nobody outside finance pays attention to. It became one of the world's major offshore centers for insurance and reinsurance. Low taxes, political stability, and a legal system built on British common law made an attractive base. Here's what that actually means. Imagine your insurance company can't afford a payout after a Category 5 hurricane wipes out half a coastline. So it buys insurance of its own from another insurance company. That's reinsurance. And there's a surprisingly good chance that other company is sitting on this tiny island. Bermuda is one of the world's largest reinsurance hubs, accounting for roughly a third of the global market by many industry measures. It's the single largest provider of catastrophe reinsurance to U.S. insurance companies, meaning when a hurricane flattens a chunk of Florida, there's a real chance Bermuda is often the one helping cover the bill. All told, the island now manages something like $1.5 trillion in assets. And Hamilton, its financial capital, still enforces a height limit on buildings. Nothing in the city is allowed to rise higher than the Cathedral Tower. Per capita, Bermuda is now one of the wealthiest places on Earth, not from oil, not from manufacturing, but from paperwork. All that wealth hasn't made Bermuda sprawl either, because it legally can't. Since 1951, each household has been allowed to own exactly one car, and visitors aren't permitted to rent private ones at all. Most people here get around on scooters, public buses, and ferries instead. On an island this small, that's less an inconvenience and more just common sense. Then there's a thing Bermuda is genuinely famous for: the shorts. They started as a practical fix. Late 19th century British military officers cutting the legs off their trousers to deal with the heat. Somehow, that battlefield improvisation became formal office wear. Today, it's completely normal to see a businessman, a government official, even the premier, in a blazer, dress shirt, long socks, and knee-length shorts. And then there's Gombe, vivid, rhythmic street performance, dancers in brightly colored costumes, towering peacock feather headdresses, faces hidden behind masks. It wasn't invented for tourists. Enslaved Africans originally created it as a way to keep their own artistic traditions alive and to hide their identities from the people who enslaved them. While doing it, what looks today like a festival used to be an act of quiet defiance. Against all odds, Bermuda is still British, and it stayed that way on purpose. In 1995, Bermuda held a referendum on full independence from the United Kingdom. Voters rejected it, decisively by their own choice. Unlike most former colonies, Bermuda's path away from direct imperial control wasn't a fight for independence. It was a slow expansion of self-government within the relationship, not a break from it. In 2002, Britain formally granted full British citizenship to all Bermudians, something that wouldn't automatically carry over the territory ever did become independent. Today, Bermuda runs almost everything about its own daily life. Its economy, its laws, its elected premier and parliament. Britain handles defense and foreign policy, and appoints a governor who represents the crown. It's a strange, hybrid kind of sovereignty, independent in almost every way that matters day to day, and still quite deliberately not independent at all. Bermuda got its start from a ship that never meant to stop there. Next week, we're heading to the other side of the planet, to a Pacific nation built from something even stranger, an island chain where people once jumped from towers tied only by vines, decades before bungee jumping existed anywhere else on Earth. Next week, Vanuatu. A shipwreck built this place. Slavery built its people. The Royal Navy built its purpose. Every time Bermuda's economy collapsed, it found another way to survive. Farming, then tourism, then paperwork. And Bermuda never became fully independent. Because it never really wanted to. 400 years later, that shipwreck is still shaping Bermuda. History is full of places that weren't supposed to survive, and somehow did. If that's your kind of story, hit subscribe. We've got plenty more.